Thanks, Cathaoirleach. I've asked you, Minister, I think, and also the Taoiseach, many times in the House over the last few years about the levels of cooperation with law enforcement agencies in the EU and further afield. I think our citizens rightly have a perception that the ongoing spate of drug-fuelled murders and crimes, that in many of those crimes they're directed from outside our state. And there's also a perception, of course, that little has been done to prevent illegal guns entering the state and being used in dastardly and appalling murders. And I know the bill before us, of course, deals mainly with the issue of legacy inquests in the north. But I mean, I wonder, on the whole area of international cooperation, is there further legislation, Minister, that you will seek to bring forward? I note, for example, that Section 5 does insert a new Section 28A into the Garda Síochána Act 2005, which amends the power of the Garda Commissioner to enter into agreements with police and law enforcement agencies outside the state by permitting the sharing of information, and of course with bodies which are equivalent abroad of our Ombudsman Commission, our Inspectorate, our policing authority, and of course the coroner under the Coroners Act, or a commission of inquiry or a tribunal, and of course in particular with the Criminal Assets Bureau. So hopefully the flow of information, Minister, which the new Section 28A will permit, will lead to arrests and prosecutions of any directors of serious crime in Ireland who live outside our jurisdiction. And Section 7, of course, didn't appear in the general scheme of the bill, which I think you published before, but it proposes to assert the new Section 81A into the 2005 Act to allow the Ombudsman Commission to enter into agreements also with law enforcement agencies outside the state. And of course Section 4 also amends the European arrest warrant in terms of in terms of people before the courts who may be extradited from our state. Of course, Section 6 allows the Garda Commissioner again to assign members of the Gardaí for service outside the state, and while it's directed, I think, mainly towards Europol, I noticed that in 2015, of course, we passed legislation permitting Gardaí to be assigned to a special intervention unit in a crisis situation in another EU state, which many citizens, of course, will also find controversial. Main function, of course, of the bill is to allow Gardaí to give evidence in the north when called to cooperate on coronial inquests relating to the Troubles, and it amends the bill, of course, amends 2005 Act of 2003, the European Arrest Warrant Act, and the Criminal Justice Act of 2008. I note in your statement, Minister, originally when publishing the bill, and acknowledging the thousands of victims of the Troubles in the north, you said that the bill does show concrete determination of the government's commitment to dealing with the painful legacy of conflict in Northern Ireland, and from that point of view, of course, the bill is very welcome. And of course, as many colleagues have said, it provides for a number of issues outlined in the Stormont House Agreement. And actually, it's sad, Minister, when we all look back at the Stormont House Agreement, which I think is coming up to 5 years now ago, that so little progress has been made, in fact, on establishing the various institutions. I know the Historical Investigations Unit that this legislation will actually cover its work. I noted a few days ago, Minister, that the new head of the Police Service of Northern Ireland, Mr. Simon Byrne, he asked that the Northern Police Force be relieved of the duty of investigating appalling historical crimes and murders in the Troubles. He said, in fact, that his force didn't have the resources, or wasn't, and I quote, best equipped, although I think at the moment there's something like 60 detectives investigating around 1,200 killings in the period that's outlined in this bill before us. But of course, we've had the decision now of the Northern Ireland Court of Appeal of Justice Sir Declan Morgan in relation to the depredations of the notorious Glenanne gang, and that will have to be investigated, and that was a very welcome development. And we also, of course, recently, just the other night, Minister, you might have seen it yourself, a very poignant documentary on the showband era, but which also mentioned, of course, and retold the story of the horrific attack on the Miami showband in 1975. And of course, in relation to the Glenanne gang, the investigation seems to relate to well over 100 desperate murders and appalling events, which again we need accountability for. I know that the bill, of course, defines the Northern Ireland Troubles related inquest, and also provides, of course, for the taking of evidence of the Gardaí for the purposes of the inquest, and sets sets out the procedure carefully to be followed in that case. I note also that it was just in last February that we heard about additional funding to be in place by April, Minister, and that the Legacy Inquest Unit would in fact be set up to deal with the 52 remaining legacy inquest cases of 93 deaths. Mrs Justice Keegan is presiding coroner on that one. So, as other colleagues have said, the legislation is a welcome step forward. It helps us, I suppose, at long last to begin to seek closure, the closure that we need on the appalling legacy of suffering and strife that happened in our country over the Troubles period. Thanks, Cathaoirleach.